Good afternoon and welcome everyone to our third Friday legal webinar for this month. My name is Sandra Vidrio and today we are joined by the team at New Business Community Law Clinic. We're joined by the director, Bill Cow, for the program. So thank you everyone for your attendance for today. Our topic is going to be focusing on the importance behind for starting a new business. So we will be covering topics such as business formation, information as to how to hire workers, the importance of having a plan in place for you as you're starting your business, and some other key legal areas regarding the formation of a business. So how to carefully plan for your business success. And I want to remind everyone to please use the Zoom meeting control features that appear on your screen. So for questions, comments, please use the chat box if you're using a computer, and if you're using a mobile device, simply select where it says more on your screen, and then you'll be able to see the chat box. That way you can ask your questions during the presentation. And I want to briefly share a little bit more about the foundation. So our team here, the Fresno Area Hispanic Foundation, has been in the community since 2004 to help and support and foster entrepreneurship. So working closely with new entrepreneurs, at the same time working with existing businesses that are looking to upskill and continue growing, whether that is through marketing visibility, access to capital, new opportunities to import, export, or being connected through our Women's Business Center with other women entrepreneurs. So our programs and services, they're open to all genders, all ethnicities. As long as you have a business idea or a service that you have, a product or service that you want to launch, our doors are open to welcome you all and work with you in finding the best program that fits your needs. And I'm also joined today with my colleagues, Rocio and Nelly, who are part of the technical assistance team here and the Women's Business Center. Thank you for that opportunity. And here are some ways that you can get connected with our organization, finding out about other upcoming webinars. And you can also follow us on our social media platforms. That way you can keep engaged with the different programming that we have available for you all. And with that short announcement, I want to welcome Bill Cow, who is our presenter for today. That way we can get started with the Become presentation. So thank you, Bill.
Thank you, Sandra. We're always so thrilled to meet with people from Fresno Area Hispanic Foundation's Orbit. And if you folks need to get in touch with us for office hours, these would be individual meetings with you after this training. We can easily set that up. We have Mondays and Wednesdays, 11 to 2 every week. And then usually we have a couple of office hours set up around these third Friday trainings. We also have a first Friday training as well up in the East Bay. So there's some office hours you can all join in on. If you want to do that, then check out this link here. And I'll have it at the end of the presentation as well. But these are free consultations, confidential. If you have your individual questions, we can always answer those. So and get you and by the way, get going on forming things. We can share with you like LLC formation materials or corporation materials or contracts or things like that. So any of those things, we're here to basically help any small business that has trouble affording an attorney, which is most people. So, okay, so it's okay to share my screen. Am I host now? Okay, good.
Yeah, you should be able to. And then if you could allow participants to join us there as you hear the
Oh, yes, for sure. And folks, what I would say to you is probably it's best to, to make sure that we keep this in under an hour or hopefully 45 minutes, that you should put questions in the chat. And at that point, once we finish up, there's lots of cover here. I'll go right to the chat and we can go, one by one there. And then when we finish that, we'll just take any questions. So yeah, happy to do that. All right, well, this is what we call the legal checklist for entrepreneurs. And this is really trying to take a look at the different legal aspects of the business, making sure you have these sort of all in order going forward. And we've actually worked this into a nice little acronym for you to remember and do sort of a self-diagnostic here. Actually, before I get started, let me just make sure there's nobody else in the waiting room. Nope, looks like I've let everybody in. Okay, good. There we go. All right, very good. Actually, let me stop sharing and share it again. Just make sure I got the audio up here. Good, good. Here we go. Great. So let me get to the first slide. Great. Now, this is not an accident why we picked this picture here. It's because we actually think very much, getting into business is a little bit like driving a car. And what do I mean by that? First I should mention, of course, this itself isn't legal advice. This is a general overview of the legal issues that affect small businesses. So it's not a substitute for these individual consultations, which you could have with us again. Sign up through that website. It's an overview of legal things going on. Okay, so what am I saying using a car example here? Well, I think there's a sort of a misunderstanding about business. Some people think it's like, it's so easy. It's like a kite, you just sort of build it and you put it up and gee, like maybe it runs into a tree at some point. You take it down, you fix it back up again. Oh, see that entrepreneur on the right there. She's getting that business going, and there maybe on the left is the investor who's just so excited about what she's doing and it's working out so well, right? Well, it's not quite so easy like that, I think. Actually, it actually feels a little bit more like learning how to drive, and you all know what that feels like. Here, hopefully you can hear this little clip that we have for you.
Okay, merge. Merge.
Yes, it's kind of harrowing at first, actually, because there's all these things to think about. Things are coming at you pretty fast. You want to be safe. You want to protect the people in your vehicle with you, your family and maybe your employees and stuff. But there's all this stuff that you have to pay attention to at the beginning. And that's what we're going to try and do here today with you. And that is to give you a sense of what are the legal aspects of starting a business. We actually break this into a nice little acronym for you to keep in mind. It's called BECOME. The idea is we want you to become a survivor, one of those 5-year, businesses that are in place, still running after 5 years. That's about 50% of the businesses that start this year. In 5 years, 50% will be there. Sandra, did you have a question? I'm sorry.
Yes, I wanted to share. For some reason, as you're sharing your screen, we could see the Zoom control feature on there.
Oh,
like it says participants chat. So it might run into some of the. So I don't know if you want to stop sharing. Yeah, if you want to stop sharing, then share again your presentation. It must be like a Zoom glitch, I would say.
Oh yeah, how about if I put it up here? Does that help a little bit? Is
to hide it?
In the way? I don't know. Is there a way to hide this thing? I know there was a way to hide this, but show video panel. Maybe that's the thing.
Maybe.
Hide floating meeting controls. Yeah. Oh, there you go. Oh, that's much better. Thank you. I didn't even know I could do that. Okay. All right. So folks, thanks, Sandra. We'll appreciate that. Okay, everybody else, make sure you put your questions in the chat as we go along. All right, so again, we want to keep you safe, strapped in, getting out on that road. Here are the legal things that you might need to think about going forward. We're talking about business modeling, making sure your business model makes legal sense, for one thing. Entity formation, if you have a good business model and you're ready to get it out into the public, let's get it in the road. Let's get on the road in an entity, and we'll tell you about different entities you can form. Most of the time, those entities need some capital to get started. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about how to hook that up with either loans or investment capital, things like that. Then one of the biggest things you should know about small businesses is usually there's lots of relationships that you have to set up and manage. So that's why we call them operational relationships. So these would be things like employees, maybe suppliers, maybe landlords. These are relationships that do have legal aspects to them as you're setting them up. So we're going to tell you a little bit about at least the employment aspect of those relationships. That's usually one of the most important ones to know. We're going to talk to you a little bit about managing risks. This would be particularly protecting the assets of your business, like your intellectual property, like the trademark of your name and things like that. And finally, there may be some aspects of your activities, business activities that require a permit. So like food businesses will need to get a food handler's permit, things like that. So we're trying to sort of give you in this quick as possible workshop, an overview of the different things you want to pay attention to as you start your business. Yeah, use this little BECOME diagnostic acronym to make sure you got all your ducks in a row, okay? All right, so we're going to go through this really relatively fast, but hopefully not blizzard fast, okay? So let's start with business modeling. Okay, business modeling. This would be your business model if you were trying to go to all of the different national parks in one drive. Okay, but you should know that a business model is a little bit more than a map. Okay, it's like an internal plan for yourself. Okay, and it's a very useful document we're going to try and give you here, which is used in almost every MBA school out there, which is thinking about the different components of a business that need to fit together in order to run smoothly. And so what we're saying to you is you might want to use this little tool to internally kind of plan for the stuff that you're trying to get out there as a business, but it actually is easy also to convert this into an external use. This is what maybe you've heard of, it's called a business plan, which is a description of everything you're going to be doing in the business that is geared toward a particular audience. So you might, in going for a bank loan, a bank may say to you, I need a business plan. I need to know what you're going to be doing. And not only in that plan, what are you going to be doing, but how are you going to be paying us back in a timely manner? So we say to you, let's start, you might say, well, wait a minute, I thought we were a legal workshop. Well, it is, because what we're saying is your business model needs to make some sense, and you need to go to into some detail at the beginning to think about how your business is going to operate, because it helps lawyers also. I mean, don't just do this for lawyers, do it for yourself, but lawyers from this, if you figured it out to some amount of detail, then they can spot issues that are going on for you that need to be addressed as you go along. So here's that canvas. And let me show you how it's filled out for Southwest Airlines. Okay, so let's start with the value proposition in the middle. Okay. The value proposition is, what is that thing that your business is giving to your customers that's hard for them to find anywhere else? Okay, so Southwest Airlines, yeah, so the distinct thing, this is boiled down a little bit, but the distinct thing about Southwest is that they want to give you cheap flights, but they don't have like a lot of first class kind of stuff. They just want you to, be able to fly where you want to go, friendly service. Yeah, so they're trying to deliver this value proposition over to the right over here to customers who might be, travelers on a budget. I might break this down a little further, maybe older people, if they're trying to do some things to appeal to elderly, maybe they're trying to appeal to more like students or stuff like that. But this is where you might want to start thinking about, okay, I have this value, who are the people I'm trying to deliver it to? Okay. And then think about, well, how am I going to deliver it to them is what's called the channels. Okay. So you can see that Southwest Airlines, what they need to do is they need to have these call centers. They need to have, in-person people at the counter, setting up tickets for you, things like that. And here you go. Above that, you have to think about, well, what kind of relationship do you want to have with the customers? Well, they want to have both an in-person relationship with the customers, and they want to interact with them over the web. Okay, so now that you figured that out, you already got a sense of, I have this value, these are the customers I'm trying to get the value to, and this is how I'm going to do it. And this is also how I'm going to continue the relationship with the customer, meeting their satisfaction, their expectations and satisfying them going forward. Okay, now look to the left a little bit. How are we going to deliver this value proposition? Well, we're going to do these activities. So you might want to list the kinds of activities you have in mind. And here Southwest is flying these planes, obviously, but they also need to book some flights. They also need to market their business. They also need to hire and train their staff. So this is, again, a good place to write down all of the activities that go into delivering this value proposition to the customers. And then you want to take into account of the resources or the assets that you have. So they've got this fleet of 737s. They've got a maintenance staff. They've got the customer facing staff. They've got branding. All right. So these are all things that they need to have in place for them to continue to again, deliver the value proposition to the customers. Oh, and they also might need some help from some partners like the airports that they run into, they fly into. I think Atlanta and Phoenix are their hubs. And so they would need to have some agreements with those airports to make sure that they can fly in lots of planes all at once to there. And as you can see, other partners, maybe they do the flight insurance, Kayak or Expedia are always helping, customers find the Southwest flights. So they might need agreements there. And finally, down on the bottom, you've got your costs and your revenues there. Okay, well, one of the first things, if you go to this kind of detail about how you're doing your business, then lawyers can easily start spotting issues. So for example, with these partners that you have, if you have some key partners that you want to have distributing your goods or helping connect customers to your services, let's have some agreements with them going forward. So it's not just like a verbal thing. There ought to be something in writing so that each party can, expect something from the other, you see. Another thing is here, anytime you got staff, anytime you're hiring people, oh yes, highly regulated. So a lawyer might need to tell you a little bit about employment law, wage and hour laws. What do you need to do for an employee versus an independent contractor? Okay. And then another thing that might be operating here would be branding. How do you protect your name? How Southwest Airlines has this nice logo and these nice colors. Well, what if somebody started using the same colors and called themselves Southwest Airlines or something like that? Well, that could be confusing, and they could be trying to trade off and take advantage on Southwest's, the knowledge of Southwest in the marketplace. So I guess what I'm saying to you is go to this level of detail to figure out your business. And then, it'll also help you spot some legal issues as well as lawyers will do so. Now, there is one other thing I mentioned here, which is make sure your business model makes some sense. Well, this is where you might want to check with a lawyer before, I guess I would say, before you presume too much about what the law will allow. Let me give you an example there. We had a business come along that said, it was kind of like this organization, what's it called? GuideStar or something like this. It's like, hey, you're driving along, you get into an accident. Ooh, how can you call somebody if you're, unconscious or something like that? Well, this guy came along and he said, well, the way to do this is we take your smartphone, which has sensors in it. And maybe you didn't know this, but sensors that would determine that somebody went from 60 miles an hour to 0 in like a second. Okay, well, so there'd be some kind of alarm or something on your phone that would then generate a call to a call center that would then say, ooh, gosh, this person might have been in an accident. How do we tell whether they just didn't, stop their phone or something like this? How are we going to do that? Well, he said, what we'll do is we'll play back the recording in your phone so that we'll know, the last 5 seconds, the last 10 seconds, whether there was an accident, because we could hear people in the vehicle. Okay, well, there's a problem with that legally. It was a very interesting idea, and it was a brilliant idea to use the sensors in this way. But the problem, when you can guess, is you can't record somebody without their consent in the state of California. You could do this in Georgia. Yeah, you could do that kind of business in Georgia because, you had your phone, somebody else was in the car, your phone recorded them. Yeah, no problem in Georgia. But here in California, that business wouldn't work because it presumed in the law that you could record somebody without their consent. So anytime you think that something is sort of legally possible, be sure to bring that up with a lawyer because, it's great to push the envelope, but on the legal side, the envelope can have some sanctions that come with it when you push it. All right, hey, so now that we've done that, let's start thinking about an entity for your business model. Okay, you've already got a nice idea about how to deliver services or products, that value proposition. Let's get it into a vehicle going forward. Okay, well, this entity that you might form, you've probably heard of a bunch of different kinds of them, sole proprietorships, partnerships, corporations, limited liability companies or LLCs. Okay, those are all kinds of entities that are available. But here's the thing, if you haven't chosen your entity affirmatively, the law will assign you one. All right. So this means that if you just start doing business and you are a single or married person, then you're going to be deemed to be a sole proprietorship, right, in the law. If there are two or more people operating this business, then you're going to be deemed to be what's called a partnership going forward. Okay. Now, why is that important? You see, neither of these entities are what we call a limited liability entity. All right. Why is that important? A limited liability entity like a corporation or a limited liability company creates separation between you and the business. So that means the business's obligations aren't yours personally. All right. So if somebody sues the business for something that happens, they can only get the assets that are in the business, not your personal assets. But if you didn't form a corporation or a limited liability company, everything is on the hook for you. Okay. Everything, I mean, your house, your car, your college fund, your savings, everything can be at risk in a lawsuit there. So this is one of the first things you might think about with an entity, choosing an entity is maybe I need this extra sort of liability backstop so that if I'm sued, I won't be held personally liable for those obligations. All right, so that's just one of the questions that you might want to think about when you're forming your entity. Here's a few others to think about. Oh, by the way, what's not important in choosing an entity is what's the easiest to form, what's the lowest filing fees, least amount of paperwork. All of these businesses are relatively easy to form. Any of these could be formed for $100 or less. And the paperwork, some have a little more than others, but those aren't the really important questions. These are the important questions. Okay, so we already dealt with one of them, this liability backstop that you might want to have for your business so that you aren't on the hook personally for the obligations of the business. Okay, and welcome to people who just came in. I'm sorry, we're sort of in the middle, but we just got started. So you can get a copy of this recording going forward. And of course, we'll have a copy of the PowerPoint for you too. All right, welcome to folks who just came. All right, so we're in this part where we're talking about how to choose an entity. What's important? Okay, you should affirmatively choose your entity. First one you might think about is, well, how am I going to make decisions in this entity? Okay, do I need to share the decisions with others? Do I need some kind of like formal structure that's going to oversee the business, like a board of directors? Okay, or do I just want to, share the decision-making with my partners? We're just going to talk about what's needed to be done on a particular day, and we'll do that. And we don't need somebody sort of overseeing everything and weighing in on stuff. A board of directors tends to not be people who are involved on a day-to-day basis in the business. Okay, but there are reasons that that's a good kind of entity for some people. So, think about first, how are the decisions going to be made in this business? Now, here's an important one. Should the entity that you form be subject to tax itself, or should it just be a reporting entity? Meaning all it does is it puts in a tax return at the end of the year, but it tells the IRS, hey, we earned this much money, but we passed it through to the owners, Okay, in that situation, the entity itself isn't taxed, only the owners are taxed, and then they pay taxes on their 1040s, you see. But there are some entities that themselves pay tax, and it's then when they distribute the profits to the owners, then the owners also pay tax on it. You see, that's what's called double taxation, and so it's more tax that might be paid in that situation, of course. I already mentioned this thing, limited liability. Yeah, should I separate myself so I'm not responsible personally for the business's obligations? Well, in the state of California, that's called paying an $800 a year franchise tax. That's something that you pay regardless of whether you had any income at all. Okay. And what that then creates for you is one of these limited liability entities like a corporation or an LLC. And that means that you aren't personally on the hook for the obligations of the business going forward. Okay. But it does require you to pay this $800 a year California franchise tax. It does start in the second year, so that's good. You have a first year holiday from this, of course. Now, what do people do with this? Just so you know, usually people will always get insurance, usually what's called general commercial liability insurance, to protect you against these kinds of lawsuits and stuff. But you see, what happens is if you're a partnership or a sole proprietorship, one of those non-limited liability entities, when that insurance runs out, you only got 100,000 of insurance and $1 million lawsuit came your way, well, you're responsible for everything that your insurance won't pay personally. Okay. But in the other situation, if you did this limited liability company or a corporation that had the shield, well, once your insurance ran out, all they could do is go to the company, the entity, to pay the extra and not against you personally. Frankly, I would not mind paying $800 a year to have that kind of backstop, just so that I could sleep at night. I would know that even if my insurance gave out, I wouldn't be personally sued. Probably a good idea, but it's not for everybody, of course. Finally, here's something that may not be an issue for anybody here, but there's only certain kinds of entities that venture capital will invest in. These are these very large sort of investment organizations who are looking for a big upside. They might say, oh, you look like you're going places. Well, how about if we give you $100,000 in investment, but we want to see that returned back to us 10 times in 5 years. Okay. I don't know if that's in your plans, but if that is in your plans, then there is a certain kind of entity that venture capital likes to invest in. We'll tell you about that in just a second. Okay, but most of the time you don't need, most of the time any of these entities will work except for a sole proprietorship or a partnership. Okay, so let's tell you about the most common entities out there. Okay, so you got your corporation, right? One thing that distinguishes the corporation is it does have this board of directors. Okay, so you have to have board meetings, you have to take board minutes. There's a lot of formalities involved in it. By the way, this could be either a for-profit or a nonprofit corporation going forward. Okay, it's sort of the same thing in many ways. For tax, this is what's called an entity level tax. So that means that the entity itself pays tax, and then when it distributes profits to the owners, then the owners are going to have to pay another level of tax there. You do pay this minimum franchise tax starting in the second year. Now, if you are a nonprofit, of course, you wouldn't have any tax on your income. However, you do have to apply for tax exemption. We can tell you how to do that, of course, going forward. It does give you the limited liability shield. That's great. For for-profits, it'll take virtually any kind of investment, personal funds from the founders, loans, this investment that then creates what's called equity. That means somebody will invest in you to get a share of the ownership, maybe a share of the profits. Yeah, corporations will take basically any kind of capital that comes along. And again, of course, nonprofits, they'll take grants and stuff, but they can't actually take investment and give back profits. That's not what they do, of course. Okay, more commonly, I would say we form people into LLCs. Why? Because here's one of the first things: governance is easy. I mean, it's the entrepreneurs themselves. They don't have to gather and do meetings and do formalities. They just work together to make their decisions. Or, they might pick somebody to be sort of the lead decision maker, like a manager, so that then maybe they have passive investors who are part of the LLC or members of the LLC, but then a manager sort of manages the day-to-day kind of situation. So there's several ways you can cut that LLC to have the management go, equally between the partners or the members, or have more of a hierarchy like that. This is what's called pass-through taxation. So that means the LLC itself doesn't pay any tax. Instead, it just passes through all the income to the members who own this thing. Okay. Now, if you do get a little big, that's over 250K a year in income, there's this extra income tax that comes in as well. And you do have to pay these franchise taxes too. Now, one of the downsides of the LLC is that all the active owners in the LLC do pay this self-employment tax, which I believe is about 15%. And that's because they are treated as profit sharers, not employees, you see. And then this does give you that limited liability shield. And again, it can take most kinds of capital that come along, either investment or loans or personal funds from the founders. Now, the sole proprietorship or the partnership, yeah, we get lots of those. The main thing you got to know here is that it doesn't give you that liability shield. It also is kind of problematic for people who want to invest in you, because it's in partnerships. By the way, everybody has to agree on everything, well, sort of like the LLCs, but investment in sole proprietorships or partnerships is very rare. It's very hard to do. Wouldn't recommend going after investments. Of course, loans, you can always get a loan written for a sole proprietor or a partnership, but it's hard to, usually a bank will want you to sign off personally on that loan, which means you don't have any limited liability shield around it. Whereas in a corporation or an LLC, you might be able to get the entity, your lender, to make the loan in the name of the corporation or the LLC and have them be responsible for it. And then if they can't pay, then they can only go after the corporation or the LLC. Now, I'll just give you a quick introduction to these less common entities because they're important for you to know, but more rare. Just know that there is a way, if you're doing a corporation, to actually write into the corporate formative documents a social mission. So if, let's say, you start a business and you say, well, look, we want to give 10% on a regular basis to homeless shelters. Yeah, well, if you want that to be part of your mission, then you might want to write it into the formative documents. And that way, if you had a shareholder come along and say, oh, what's this mission to give to homeless shelters? Nuts to that. I want you to make as much money for me as possible. Well, if you didn't put the social mission in your articles, yeah, then a shareholder could challenge it. In this situation, they wouldn't be able to challenge it because they had already been given notice in the articles that you had this extra bottom line. And if you want to see what happened badly with this, go and check out Ben & Jerry's, because they tried to do this with their youth entrepreneurship focused mission and got pushback from their shareholders, you see. Okay, now maybe some of you heard about this thing called an S Corp. Okay, an S Corp is different from a C Corp. That thing I told you about a minute ago, that's what's called a C Corp for a for-profit. This is called an S Corp. And the distinction about that is that it's taxed under a different part of the IRS code, subchapter S, as you can guess. The other is under subchapter C. But the difference between the two is that you could have a corporation that has pass-through taxation, like the LLC. Okay, well, why might you want to do this? Well, this is an interesting thing. See, in the S Corp, if you were like an LLC, but you filed for S corporation pass-through status, this is a way to save on your self-employment taxes, because the S Corp could become your employer. All right. So even if you were in an LLC, you could say, okay, well, we're going to have the company hire us as their employee, it'll be our employer, and then pay the employer's share of Social Security taxes and deduct all those costs, my compensation and the employer's share of FICA. And then they deduct it as a business expense, and you might save yourself some taxes on that. You wouldn't be subject to self-employment tax. Well, that sounds all well and good. The problem with S corps is they're a little fragile. The reason is that Congress has put on them all kinds of requirements that make a big difference. So, for example, you can't get investors who are non-human. Okay, only humans can invest in S corps, not companies. So those venture capitalists, they can't invest in you as an S corporation. Also, the humans also have to have the legal right to be in the country. So you have to be either a legal resident or a citizen. So if anybody's undocumented, you can't do an S corp. Couple other things, but just know that if you blow one of these requirements, it's easy then to revert over back to a C corp. And what was the thing about the C corp? Remember, they actually pay tax. The entity itself pays tax, and you don't want to do that if you can avoid it, you see. All right, final thing, cooperatives. We can easily set up any of these things, LLCs or corporations, into a worker ownership kind of arrangement. The distinctive thing here is that worker owners, there really isn't usually any passive investors in cooperatives. And of course, there's really big cooperatives. I mean, there's like Maytag, I think is one, and also what is it? Land O'Lakes Butter is one as well. So what I'm saying is that it's easy to create a big company and be a cooperative and have worker ownership. It just takes a little extra to fix up their formative documents for that. And again, we can help you do that. All right, the final thing you should know. We have many people coming in saying, oh, well, there's no corporate taxes in Nevada. Let's form in Nevada. No, not a good idea. Form where you are, generally speaking, because what's going to happen is if you form outside of California, but you operate in California, you are going to be subject to that franchise tax still. Because you are operating in California, you have to register to operate in California, even if you formed in Nevada. All right. So the only reason that you might want to form outside of California would be if you are trying to seek these venture capital dollars, these big major investment companies, because they want you to incorporate in Delaware. Why Delaware? Because Delaware is very business friendly law. It has these business savvy courts that then the investors know how cases are going to work out, because it won't be a traffic court judge deciding things. It will be a business trained judge deciding things. Okay, but as you can see, if you form in Delaware, you're still going to have to be subject to California laws and their franchise taxes. You'll pay franchise taxes in Delaware. So only do this if you really want to go the venture capital route, and otherwise form in California. Great. Oops, how did that happen? By the way, California is no slouch in terms of investment. I mean, eBay and Apple, these big companies have formed in California, not Delaware. So, no slouch to doing California. Okay, now we're going to go to the next slide here. Oop, I'm having a little trouble going to my next slide. Come on. I must have hit something here. Come on. Let's go. Next slide. Hold on, guys. Sorry, having a little trouble with the slide here. Oh, there we go. Okay, now we're back again. All right, so that was entity. That was a lot of stuff, but entity is kind of an important choice, so we want to make sure you knew all of the stuff there. All right, capitalization. Now you got your entity. Now you got your business model that works, parked in an entity. Now let's get some fuel in that tank. Let's get some capital going forward. All right, well, firstly, why might you need capital? Well, I mean, normally you want to design your business so that the revenue that comes in on a regular basis is going to pay your employees and the rent and everything like that. But sometimes you need some capital at the beginning to do your prototype, or maybe you're fixing up like a barbershop and you got to do a lot of renovation or something like that. Maybe later you'll need capital if you want to expand, to another location or something like that. So, there's a couple of different places you could get this capital. The founders and friends could put in capital. You could get some loans from banks or private creditors, or you could get some investment from these, what we call equity investors. Okay. Grants, government, like foundations or government, they don't tend to give to for-profit businesses. Although during the pandemic, government was doing some, PPP loans and other things that were helpful to keep businesses afloat. Less so these days, I would say. So what am I talking about with capital? What is the kind of capital you generally need? Well, you need a balance, between personal funds that you put in and loans, maybe. Okay. And then maybe you want to also sell these ownership shares of your business, the equity, have investors and stuff. So there are trade-offs, though, with each of those kinds there. Okay. Personal funds. Yeah. Well, you don't have to pay it back if you fail, but you can't just, bankrupt your family with having them fund your business and then it goes down. Debt or loans, well, one of the upsides here is you don't have to give up any control. The bank isn't going to come in and say, do your business this way or that way. But if you do close, you still have to pay it back, is the problem. And then there's these equity shares, you can get investment, and usually you don't have to pay that back if you fail, but often they'll want some control over what you're doing. Maybe they'll want to have a vote in certain management decisions that you make, you see. Okay, so you got to find a balance here. Let's cover a couple of things. Well, this is sort of a typical capital arrangement that people have. So at the beginning, and this may be where you are in the blue or the green section here, founders are putting in their own money. They raise, maybe debt capital from a bank that could be secured by like a vehicle or a house, or it could be unsecured. It'd just be, a debt they promised to pay. You might get some equity funds, some investment from friends or angels. Angels are investors who don't care about a big upside on the profit side, not like a venture capitalist, but they invest in you because they love your business. So it'll be like somebody who really likes a chef's, particular chef's cooking. And so they'll invest in their restaurant, but it's not like they're going to, order that chef around or expect like a 20 times return on their investment or something like that. All right. Now, what you should note is you could have any kind of entity here, an LLC, a partnership or corporation, to do any of those things there. But you got to know that when you want to get into like scaling your business, like creating a franchise or making it really big, maybe you've developed some technology that could be, important for a lot of other companies and stuff. Okay, well, when venture capital comes along, they're going to generally want to see you in a corporation, not any of these other kinds of entities here. And here's another important thing you should know is when the venture capitalists come along, there's lots of lawyers that are ready to help you with setting up these venture relationships. And yet on the left-hand side in the blue and the green area where you are now, lawyers are maybe harder to find. I mean, unless you can pay $400 an hour, that's where we try and fill in the gaps. But just know that as you get bigger and bigger, it's easier to find attorneys to help you, sadly, but true, it should be the other way around. Okay, so where can you find your capital? Okay, well, here's the thing. Almost everybody can use loans, from banks or private lenders. They can use this thing called Kickstarter. We'll tell you about what that is in just a minute. But for LLCs and corporations, those are the ones who can really sell pieces of their business ownership shares to investors. So let's make sure you know how to do all of this. Let's start with the loans. They're probably pretty straightforward. You're using something called a promissory note. And usually it has these kinds of terms. What is the amount borrowed? What's the interest rate? When do you have to pay it back? What happens if you can't pay? Now, an important part of this I mentioned earlier is who's responsible for paying back this loan? Is it the business itself? Is it an obligation of the business, or is it a personal obligation of yours? Did you personally sign off on it? Of course, you're going to want to try and get your entity to take on the obligation. Some banks won't do that with new companies who don't have a track record, you see. All right. So strong recommendation here would be anytime you sign a loan document, even with the feds, like through the PPP loans or stuff like that, have a lawyer look at it just so you know what happens if something goes wrong. All right. Now there's this other thing called Kickstarter. Kickstarter is kind of an interesting thing. It's not like selling a share of your business. And it's not exactly like a loan. It's more like a pre-sale. So let's say you make pies. You can say, well, I normally will sell these pies for $20 each, but I need some initial capital to get things going. How about you give me $100 and I'll give you 10 pies. I'll give you a coupon for 10 pies. That saves you a lot of money. And it gives me initially some capital to start setting up my shop or buying supplies or stuff like that. Now, the main thing, of course, is you have to follow through with that promise to, give them the 10 pies and stuff. But just know that these aren't really regulated very much because they're simply sort of saying, put down this money and you get an early sale of my product. Okay. Not highly regulated. Kickstarter is the site you would go to set something like this up. Okay. Now here's the last thing, selling ownership shares to investors. Oh my goodness. Okay, these are highly regulated. Okay, this means that you are saying to somebody, give me some money investing in my business and I will give you some upside later, some kind of advantage, financial advantage. Usually when somebody is given that a thing, they get a portion of profits promised to them in the future. Or at least when they sell their share of a business later, they'll make a profit on it because it was cheaper earlier when they bought it. All right. It might also give them the right to exercise some control over your decisions. All right. But these are lots of restrictions here. Why? Because, previously, like during the Great Depression back in the 1930s, there were people going around and pitching companies which were sham companies. They'd say, invest in us and you get this upside. Well, then they would just take your money and go with it like that. Okay. So you just got to know that these are things that the US government, the SEC, Securities and Exchange Commission, and the state of California are really touchy about. Okay. Well, let's talk about the two ways that you can sell securities. This is what this is called, an ownership share of your business. Okay. Crowdfunding. Let's give you a sense of the two ways sort of overall. Okay. Crowdfunding. This is one of the few things that Obama got through the Republican Congress. And this is a thing called the Federal Jobs Act. And what it allows us to do, so like you and me, people who aren't millionaires and don't have huge amounts of money, it allows us to invest in businesses. Oh, yes, it's true. So what you do is you go to a portal, a funding portal. I'll tell you more about this in a minute, which then says, okay, well, how much do you want to invest? I'd say, well, I want to invest $10,000 this year. And they'd look at my income and they go, oh, no, you don't have enough income to do that. We'll let you invest $5,000. Okay, well, then I'll say, well, what can I invest in? And they'll say, oh, well, look at these particular business opportunities, these companies that have listed on our portal. And here you go. Here's some financial information about what they are all about. And here's a business plan. Remember that business plan I was talking about earlier? And then I can choose. I can choose which ones I want to invest in, but I'm limited by my income to a certain amount per year. And the portals will check all this out for you and make sure that you don't invest too much, and also make sure that the investment is set up right. All right. Otherwise, you got these things called traditional sales of securities. Okay. And here's the thing. Because of that potential for people to mislead people on what they're investing in, well, here's the exception. They allow you to do this, but only if you sell shares of your business to insiders, okay, insiders, or rich people. The rich people are referred to as accredited investors. We'll go into that in a minute, what that means. But what I'm saying to you is, if you're not using crowdfunding and you're just saying to people, hey, invest in my business, you're going to be constrained a lot about what you're doing with that. Only insiders, that'd be like you and your family and maybe your friends, maybe somebody who developed your website, who knows your business. they're the only ones who can buy shares of your business, or rich people. Okay, we'll cover that in just a second. So this is the rule for selling equity outside of the crowdfunding environment here. All right, this is one of the exceptions, few exceptions for selling ownership shares. It's called Rule 504. And it's limited to, your company will be limited to raising 1 million in a 12-month period. You can't advertise. You can only sell to insiders, people who know the company, who wouldn't be misled by a founder saying, "Oh, invest in me, invest in me." And brother of a founder would say, "Well, is this a good deal?" You know, so they would do some inquiry, or they would rely on their family not to mislead them and stuff. Or credit investors who are rich people who make over $250K a year, or they have more than $1 million in net worth outside of the value of their house. So those people, we don't care if they get misled, because usually they're very careful about where they invest their money. So again, only insiders, only rich people. But yeah, you can sell shares to them. Generally, these are restricted shares so that the people buying them can't just go ahead and resell them. They have to offer them back to the company, who can then buy them if they want to sell out. And then you also have to register. This is a number of things. See, there's lots of things you got to do with selling ownership in your company. So if you're doing that, just know, probably want to talk with an attorney before you're doing that. You can't just go to your church and say, "Hey, we got a new investment opportunity. Please invest in me." Well, that probably broke like 3 federal laws right there to do that. Okay. All right, guys. Well, that was a lot. Entities, capital. Now let's talk about who's in the car with you going forward. Remember this example that we're talking about the business as being like kind of like learning how to drive a car and getting into an entity and driving. Well, there might be people in the car with you, like workers, okay, or suppliers or consumers. All of these people might be sort of in the business with you, and you need to set up the relationships with them kind of carefully. You know, you got to definitely know what is required by government. So to hire a worker, you really need to know what the employment laws are. But there are some things that are maybe minimally necessary, but not government required. So for example, with a consumer, well, there's only certain contracts, like over 1,000, a sale of goods over $500 has to be in writing under a government law, you should know. But should any contract under 500 be in writing? Oh, yes, minimally necessary. I would make a contract. I mean, maybe not if you're a food truck and you're selling a taco, you don't need a written contract for that. But if you're making any promises, you're selling them something and you're making some warranties about what it's going to do and what happens if it goes wrong. Yeah, definitely put that in writing going forward. Okay, so I'm going to tell you how to set up a contract with a worker, an arrangement with a worker. I shouldn't say contract, because this is one of the places where people get in trouble the quickest. Okay, and why is that? It's because the state of California is very protective of employees. They presume that all workers are employees. And so there are these 17 things. And if you go to this Google Drive, we'll give you the PowerPoint. It'll be an overview of all the 17 things that you have to do with employees. And if you were ever an employee, you'll probably know some of these. They take, taxes out of your paycheck. You have to do an I-9 to show that you have the right to work in the US. They'll take out amounts for workers' compensation. They have to pay disability. They have to follow wage and hour laws, to pay overtime. So lots and lots of stuff to pay attention to. And so how do you keep track of all this? Well, we say definitely a good idea to use a payroll service, because they are in the business of managing all of these 17 things for you. Definitely a deductible business expense. Unless you're an accountant, you're not going to like handling all these 17 things at once. Right. Now, one other thing you should know is there's things in California, you're in what's called an at-will state. At-will means that the employee or the employer can leave the relationship at any time for any legal reason. I'm employing you as a greeter at a restaurant. You are rude to a customer. I can say, we don't tolerate that. You're gone. And I don't have to give you 2 weeks notice or anything like that. But you can do the same. You can say, look, nuts to this. I don't like this. I'm leaving right now. All right, but you should know that if you require something like a 2-week notice, well, then you have lifted yourself out of at will, and now you can only terminate that employee for cause as a contracted employee. See, even without a contract, a court will deal with this as though you are not an at-will employee anymore, you see. All right, so what's the alternative to that? Independent contractors. Oh yeah, why don't I just hire somebody who can just, I'll just say, I'll pay you a certain amount. I don't have to worry about these 17 things. Well, that works with only certain workers now. It's something that California is really focusing on a lot right now. Here's the test. If you want to try and do an independent contractor, you can't control them very much. So you couldn't like have a CEO be a contractor because you have to control those people, right? Okay. Actually, the best example of this, when you think of a contractor, think of a plumber, okay? So you just say, hey, plumber, my drain's clogged up. Can you take it? Can you empty it? Can you get it working again? And the plumber comes in and says, sure. And they bring all their tools. You don't stand over them and tell them what to do. They just come in, fix your drain going forward. Okay. And then another couple of things about plumbers that are like what independent contractors have to be is they can't be used to provide your core services of the business. What does that mean? Well, like if you're a daycare center, your daycare teachers need to be employees, right? If you are a transportation company, your transportation people providing driving should be employees. And that's where Uber is in litigation right now with the state of California because they advertise themselves as a transportation company and they're using contractors to do it. Generally, that's illegal in the state of California. Then the last thing, again, plumber example, they tend to need to be in their own business, need to be able to work for other people. This avoids, how would I say it, exploitation of the contractors. Again, a plumber fits this. They go and work for other people and stuff. So you need to pass this 3-part test if you're going to hire somebody as a contractor. There's going to be big penalties for misclassification. These people can come back and sue you and say, I should have been an employee up to 4 years after they contracted with you. Okay. So in that, by the way, you do have to set up an independent contractor with a written contract. You have to address liability issues. What happens if something goes wrong? Also, like if you use a contractor for like your website, you should know that they might set up your website, but they need to actually transfer that website to you because the presumption is if they've made it, it's theirs. So make sure that they assign the intellectual property, the copyright of that website to you before you leave. Finally, volunteers and interns. Generally, volunteers are okay for nonprofits. For for-profits, you got to know interns can't replace employees, and you have to give them some kind of educational programming so that there's a benefit to them. Often interns are more trouble than they're worth. Okay, well, we just have 2 more things to go, but it's getting close to 2 o'clock, isn't it? Oh, getting close. Let me see if I can do this in 2 minutes. All right, you ready? Managing risks. That looks kind of risky, doesn't it there? Every business has to manage their risks. So this is where we say, gee, why lose sleep at night? Form a corporation or an LLC so you get that backstop, that liability backstop, and definitely get some insurance. Use a broker to shop for insurance because like State Farm agent can only sell you State Farm. You want to get a broker who can shop among a number of policies. And then of course, supervise your employees carefully because they are your, extensions of you going forward. Now, one of the biggest risks that you have to manage is intellectual property. Intellectual property is stuff that you might create for the company, like your name or content. And so make sure that all these people who've created these for you, like that contractor who created your website, make sure they assign it to the company. And here's just a very quick overview of intellectual property. You can check out the overview at this PowerPoint below there. But there are protections potentially for different things. Let me tell you about those real quick. Trade secrets. If you have a secret thing that only you know about and it's valuable, like your customer mailing list or your recipes or something, as long as you take reasonable steps to protect those, like use non-disclosure agreements or put it behind a password on your computer, those are going to be protected. You don't actually need to do any filing to protect that. This is to combat corporate espionage, you see. Patents, yeah, we could do a whole workshop on this, but the basic idea with a patent is if you have a unique process or product, you could get a protection from the national government as long as you disclose how you make it. And it usually costs about $10,000 to get a patent. Talk to us if you're interested in this. We can refer you to a patent attorney. Copyrights, you're creating content like this PowerPoint here is content. Once I put it into this tangible form, it is already protected. So somebody couldn't take this and start using it without my permission. But if you wanted to sue somebody for using your copyrighted material, you actually have to register it with the US Copyright Office. Final thing you should know is that trademarks, these are like your name, maybe your logo. These you have to register with the US Patent and Trademark Office to get national protection on that so that people can't use them to confuse others about who, that they're you or that you're affiliated with them. And then we always say, if somebody's working with you, yeah, like use a non-disclosure agreement to make sure that nobody's going to run away with your secrets and stuff. Last thing is these extra permits and licenses. Well, what's great here, we got one page, and that is just use this website called calgold.ca.gov. You go on that and you just type in your business activity and it'll spit out for you all of the regulations, all of the permits that you have to get, local, federal, state. And it's a really great service. But you just got to know that normally if you are in a if you're operating in a county, you need to let that county know that you're in business. It's usually what's called a doing business as form or getting a business license. You just need to let them know that you're doing business and how to contact them. And there might be some regulations of where you do your business. Normally, commercial activities go on in commercial areas and not in residential areas, but there are a number of home businesses that work as well. Just check with your local zoning department. But if you didn't get any of these approvals and somebody sues you, ooh, woe to you. If you were like a food business and you didn't have a food permit, wow, a judge would immediately say you are definitely liable because you didn't get a permit. So don't mess around with permits for sure. All right, guys, that's what we got. Business modeling, entity formation, capital, operational relationships, managing those risks, and the extra permits. Those are the things you need to sort of check off in order to get on the road safe, behind the wheel, going forward. We can help you do that. Here's how you get in touch with us again. That's the website to sign up for office hours. You can just email us with this one. You might check out our online library for entrepreneurs, which just has a lot more information on it. It's free 24/7. You can just check that out. And do check us out on Facebook and Instagram too. All right, guys. Well, that's where we're at the end of the slideshow here. We will share with you a PowerPoint and the recording here. Now let's get to some of these questions. Okay, here you go. And if you don't have any questions, yeah, feel free to drop out at this point. Let's see. We got this. Thank you, Cassandra, for sending these things along. Good. This is
So a lot of the questions on the chat are focusing on
LLCs.
LLCs, yes.
Yes. Well, I'll tell you real quick how to do that. And I can send you a PowerPoint. In fact, if you, why don't we do this, Sandra, if you see who asked an LLC question, I can send them an actual how to. Well, why don't I send the whole PowerPoint to everybody if you need this, okay? LLCs are really easy. You go to the state website, Secretary of State website. It's called BizFile, okay, BizFile. And you'll look up on that and then it'll say file, it'll say something like articles of organization for an LLC. It's $70. Okay. If you click on that, the only thing it's going to ask you for is, well, who are the members of the LLC? Just give me their addresses and stuff. Pay your $70 and then Zoom. You are an LLC. You don't have to hire a Rocket Lawyer. You don't have to hire Zoom, legal Zoom or anything. You can do it yourself. Okay. The one thing you don't get with that, though, is this operating agreement that sets out then the terms between the different founders. And we've got that. Happy to share that with you. And you can do this as a single member, too. You should know. Yeah, you could have a single member LLC where you're not responsible for the business's obligations. Okay. And so we could share with you, just email us if you need one of these operating agreements. So again, it's a two-step process. You register first, and then you sign an operating agreement setting forth the terms of your LLC. Okay.
And then can you clarify, Bill, regarding the operating agreement? So it sounds like to file online through the BizFile website, there's no need to upload the operating agreement, but where's an example of to when that operating agreement becomes handy?
Well, it might be that the bank, for example, you set up an account with a bank. They might say, oh, well, it's nice that you've been approved at the state level. I want to see your operating agreement. Certainly anybody signing on as another member of the LLC might say, well, what are the terms here? How do the profit shares go? You know, who makes decisions? They'll want to see the operating agreement, you see. And it's just good for making sure that everybody's on the same page going forward. Who makes the decisions? I suppose one thing I've seen in operating agreements that's an important thing is it'll say, oh, well, member Jones will only be working on this half-time. And member Smith says, this is my full-time business. And if you don't get that out at the beginning, that everybody agrees on that, there could be some friction going forward, you can imagine. So we've got good lay-friendly operating agreements to share with you. Yep.
Perfect. And then can you provide an example as to the, so once again, the LLC, they can file online, $70 fee, whether it's single member, multi-member, and operating agreement, it's best practice to have within the business operations to have that document
Operating
ready.
agreement. Yeah, and you don't need a broker to register an LLC. You just go to BizFile, Secretary of State. Yeah, it's easy, $70.
And for established businesses that are currently operating as a sole proprietor that perhaps they have an FBN, let's assume, but they want to become now an LLC, what would that process look like?
Well, it would be the same thing, except once you do your LLC, once you register it, then you'd apply for a new EIN for that LLC. See, so you can't use that other one you've been using yourself before. And by the way, some people might say, well, I'm a sole proprietor. Do I need to get an EIN? Actually, you don't need to. It does help, though, because it helps separate the expenses. It's more easy to get a bank account for the sole proprietorship that's separate from you if you have an EIN. Okay, and there are some ways that tax-wise it works out better for you. You talk to an accountant, but I've heard that an EIN is better for keeping track of your income and expenses.
That's a very key point, separating those business assets from personal assets. So as you're starting the business, we highly, highly encourage you to set up a business bank account. And there's some local banks. Look into your, within your community to see what banks are offering free business accounts if you're a sole proprietor. There's some here in the area of Fresno. So we'll keep you posted on those resources if you do come across. And since we're still in the topic of business entity, can you share a little bit more, explain a little bit more regarding articles of a organization versus incorporation? Yeah,
sure. So it's a little bit of a different terminology, but not a big deal. When you're forming an LLC, it's not a corporation. It's not a corporate vehicle, okay? So they just call it, the form that you use to file on BizFile is called the Articles of Organization rather than the Articles of Incorporation because you're not a corporation. So, but again, those are very simple. All they say is, okay, who's a member of this LLC? How does is everybody participating in the management, or are there some that are more passive than others? That's all that they're going to ask you at the state level. Oh, also a mailing address. But that's your articles of organization. Whereas articles of incorporation do have a little bit more in them because you have to say things like, well, how many shares, ownership shares is the board going to be able to distribute? And normally you want to set that at a very high number. So you'd say like, oh, we're a new corporation. Well, it'll have some of the same information as the LLC, how do we get in touch with them? Where's their address? Things like that. But it also, you'll want to put in there some things about, well, the board is authorized to issue 10 million shares. It doesn't mean that they've issued it. It just means the board has the power to issue shares. And then, of course, when the owners get started, then they issue themselves some shares. When investors come along, they issue them some shares. So again, it's a different kind of entity, not incorporated, LLC, not incorporated, corporation, yes, incorporated. Mhm.
Thank you. And when it comes to forming a corporation for those businesses that are in that process of wanting to form a corporation, is that something that they can do on their own, or
Yep.
they need to find a professional
Nope.
resource?
Easy to do that on your own. In fact, the BizFile website will build your articles of incorporation for you. So the main things you need to show up with for that, to do that, would be, first it'll cost $100. That's the filing fee. Okay. Then it's going to say, okay, what's your business's name? It's going to say, how does it get mail? You can't, by the way, when you're registering one of these businesses, you can't use a PO box. You have to use a actual mailing address, a street address. Okay. And then it's going to say, yeah, how many shares do you want the board to be able to issue? Again, use a big number, 10 million, just give you lots of flexibility going forward. And then you just sign it, it just, they'll have a DocuSign thing, I think, on there to make sure you signed it. And you pay your $100 and then you're a corporation. Yep, right there.
And that applies for S Corp or a C Corp?
Yeah, now there you go. So the corporation itself is the legal entity. Remember that the S corporation status or the C status is a form that you file with the IRS to tell the IRS how to tax you. Okay. And if you don't file any form, the IRS is going to presume that you're a C corporation, that you are an entity level taxpayer, and they're going to see probably what's called an 1120 tax return from you every year, and you're going to pay some tax with that. Okay, but if you want to become this pass-through corporation that meets all of those different requirements I mentioned earlier, then you're going to file something called an 8832, which is a tax form that will then transform your tax status. Again, nothing about your corporation will be different. It's just how the IRS is going to expect your tax return every year, you see. But you filed the 8832. You got to do that relatively early in the tax year. I think it's by February 15, if you're a calendar year taxpayer. Or if you form in the middle of the year, you got to do it within like a month or 2 months of filing in the middle of the year. Yeah.
Perfect. And at what point is that corporate binder come into place? Or how?
Ooh, corporate binder. Well, that would be things. See, the main thing with corporations you should know is that you want to be proactive about showing that you've been diligent in keeping the formalities. So a corporate binder is where you would keep things like the minutes of your meetings if you had them. Okay, and I would say that this is one of the first lines of attack if a lawsuit comes against you. They're going to try and say, oh, the corporation, the shield shouldn't be protected here because they didn't do their job getting minutes and keeping, doing meetings and stuff like that. And if you didn't do the formalities like that, another thing that they might argue is, well, they've paid all these personal expenses out of the corporation's bank account. Look at all this, look at all that. So you want to keep things separate, just like Sandra was saying, personal and business. But that's where the corporate binder, then, they say, well, you didn't do any of the formalities. That's where you arrive to court and say, well, check out this corporate binder here. See, we've been doing all the formalities. Yeah, we've done minutes, all this stuff. That's what you want to have in your possession. And again, nobody has to create this for you. I will tell you that if you do form a corporation, you're going to get a notice from this scam organization. I think it's called, there's several of them, and the state of California has failed to regulate them very much, but they're going to look very official, and they're going to say something like, ooh, if you don't keep your minutes, you could lose your corporate status, and we'll do your minutes for you for $150 a year. Well, you don't have to pay anybody to do your minutes. You just have to keep your minutes. So don't give in to those people wanting to do stuff for you. Instead, just have a binder, fill in the minutes, make sure you have, make sure you do some meetings, and then you'll be fine.
Yeah, I'm really glad you brought that point up because it is very true. The fact that, there are some companies, they're gonna, send out information
Scary things. It'll
that,
look like
that-
it'll look like it's from government even. Yeah,
and I
yeah.
think for LLC, sometimes they get regarding poster laws, right?
Oh, yes. So there's another one. They'll say, if you don't inform your employees with our $200 poster, well, no, you can get that poster online for what? I think I've seen it for like $40. It's easy to get that. So sorry. Any other questions we see? Let's see. LLC applications is my own address or the business address. Well, the main thing is it should be a stable address. I wouldn't want to just take something that you're about to move out, something next week. And it could be anybody's address, so if you have a board, it could be any board member's address. It just can't be a PO box.
So for those home-based businesses.
Oh yeah, owner, home is fine. Yeah. Transportation company are required to have other licenses. Oh, yes. So go to that, good question there, iPhone, whoever that is. Just do that here. I'll put it on here. Remember that website that was in there? It's called calgold.ca.gov. Yeah. And so if you go to that website and you find, I think it has a drop-down menu, but it has like 100 different business activities in it. So find the different activity that's closest to you, put in what county you're in, and it'll spit out what are the permits that you need. State, federal, local. Sure, anytime.
Thank you. And
Yeah.
I will make sure to share here the link to be able to access if you are looking to have a one-on-one meeting with the team at Berkeley Law. I will go ahead and share that on the
Oh,
chat.
actually, you got there? Yeah, I was just gonna give you a real quick one.
Have
There
a
you go.
further-
Law.berkeley.edu NBCLC. Yep.
So the very final question is, sometimes business owners, they start with a business name, but along the way, they want to do a rebranding. So what would that process look like when it comes from a legal standpoint, changing their name?
And it is a good idea to check the USPTO's website. Let me see if it would be the US Patent and Trademark Office. So I think if you just go to uspto.gov, you'll get there. Okay. And they will actually, the thing to do is put in like USPTO, just go to Google and say trademark search. Yeah. So if you just put that into Google, it'll get you right to the search engine. And that's where you put in your name. By the way, just spelling your name differently, like if I've spelled McDonald's, MICDONELD, well, that's very clever, but McDonald's is going to come after you for having a burger joint spelled in a different way. So just know that you should be checking not only what your actual name is, but what it sounds like too, because anybody hearing that is going to be confused, you see. And the main thing the USPTO is concerned about is confusion, customer confusion. And so that's where you'd want to put in that name. If some names come up, the first thing we have to look at is whether it's a live trademark or a dead trademark. A dead trademark is just one that has been used but has been discarded. So that's available to use, generally available to use. Or it's somebody, I suppose it could be somebody who got suspended and are now trying to get it back going again. So you might want to check and see if it's truly dead or if it's going to come back into life. But check the live ones, all right? And then the next thing you do is check if any of the live ones, you can pick them, as you go along, and you need to find out, one, where are they? Okay, if they're in the same state where you are, okay, I'd look at those more closely. Second is, what are they doing? Are they doing something that's similar to what you're doing? So here you go. If I was doing, how about if I did a Dove, let's say I have a nail clipper and I'm going to call it the Dove nail clipper. Okay, so I plug in Dove nail clipper. Okay, I'll probably see Dove soap. I'll probably see Dove ice cream bars. I'll probably see Dove a number of other things. But as I check into them, I'll see, okay, well, Dove nail clippers, Dove soap, Dove ice cream, those things aren't any near to me. So just know that those things, you might find some with the same name, but if they're doing something pretty different from you, then there's not going to be a problem with trademarking that because you're not, in their space. So if you do find somebody who's in your space, well, then maybe come talk to us or come talk to a trademark attorney because there are ways potentially sometimes that you could get like how would I say it, a coexistence arrangement agreed to. I would say most of the time people turn those down, but I've seen them happen before where somebody says, oh, well, you're in California, we're limited to Illinois. Sure, we'll coexist with you. Maybe they charge you something for it, something like that. But you want to have that agreement in place so that they don't come after you and say cease and desist right after you did a big branding campaign. And by the way, this is serious. We've had people, unfortunately, a nice company. Oh, it was a great company starting up in the Central Valley, and they had just gotten some financing. They just won some awards for their entrepreneurship thing. And it turned out there was this little podunk company in Santa Monica that had the same name. And right in the middle of their investment campaign, sent them a cease and desist. And unfortunately, they had to totally rebrand, and it was a big mess. And so, yeah, try and check this out. Mm-hmm.
So it's checking at the USPTO at the federal level, and then from there, checking locally as well.
Well, you'd want to do a Google search too.
Yes.
So here's what would happen. Yeah, let's say that I did that Dove nail clipper thing. I'd also want to do a Google search locally, because if there was somebody who was unregistered in the trademark office, but was still doing what I was doing, then they do get some rights because they've become known in the area. So I could find, oh, Dove Nail Clipper Company has been here for 20 years in Merced. Oh no, okay, well, then they get the geographic area around there. But up in Berkeley here, I could probably still run it, and because it's not gonna be a problem up here in Berkeley. So, and by the way, you should just know that once you do this, and we have a nice little PowerPoint, by the way, to explain how to trademark without an attorney. And that you should just know probably costs about between $600 or $900 to trademark like a logo and a name, or you might do them together. But you can do that yourself without an attorney's help. Mm-hmm.
Perfect. Thank you. Well, I appreciate you the opportunity to share with all of us your knowledge on all these legal business subject matters. A great conversation on entity formation and trademarks as well. So we will be sending everyone today's recording. I don't see any other questions on the chat box, and also those attachments that were referenced during the presentation.
Okay. Oh, I did see something in the chat, how to change your business name. So the trademark is one aspect of it, but remember, you're going to be registering locally your name that you're doing business like with Fresno County. Just make sure that when you change your name, you change it with the local government as well. They may require you to publish it in the paper again. So that's like $80 to do that. But just make sure that like the IRS knows you're changing your name, local government's changing your name. Yeah, otherwise, and then the trademark office, if that change name might violate somebody's trademark. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Okay. Okay, well, do let us know, folks, if you'd like an individual meeting. We're happy to help anytime, and good luck in your businesses, everybody.